Welcome to episode 42 of The Big Picture, where we help you see,
think, and
act
act big. And there's never one episode, Dave, that we're so synchronized with
that's
our
our
intro.
trademark already.
And I guess that is our trademark. And guys, we are so happy to have a fellow podcaster here today. Our guest for today is a podcaster, and she helps women gain their self-confidence. And the title of her podcast is The Tao of Self-Confidence. She also offers tools to boost women's self-confidence, and she also interviews Asian women in particular, because Asian women doesn't have enough representation, basically. Not just in the podcast world, but all throughout the internet scape. And today, let me just introduce you, Sheena Yap Chan. Hi, Sheena.
Hi guys, thanks
Hi.
for having me here
All
today.
right. Okay, so thank you, Sheena, for being here live. I have to tell you that I'm so happy that you're based here in Cebu. That way we don't have to fly out and seek you out.
Yes.
We're so, I would say, Dave and I were so impressed with your work. And that's why we're thrilled
Thank you.
to have you. And for you guys who just heard about her, you can check out her work in www.thetaoofselfconfidence.com.
Yeah.
Right? And you can also search for the Tao of Self-Confidence. She has over 500 episodes already out in the podcast. And that's just amazing.
Yeah, I think for all the Filipino podcasters that I've checked, right? I think she is the one.
We did a
leading.
deep research.
Trailblazer.
all day.
with our limited resource and our small group of Filipino podcasters in Podcast PH, we had so Sheena, I think, is the one was
Yeah.
that a lot of episodes of 500 over
and
500.
the big picture is like there. Like, but and the other reason why we're thrilled is because we just want to know, we want to know her story, and then also in the process we also like to help you guys take advantage of podcasting, anything online. If you're running a business, there's so much things to do to get people's attention, and one of which is podcasting. We recently had a workshop,
Yes.
right?
Masterclass.
Anyway, so Sheena, can you tell us, a little bit about yourself for the few people that haven't heard your podcast?
Sure. Thanks for having me again. So my name's Sheena Yap Chan, and I have a podcast called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I interview Asian women about their journey to self-confidence. And for me, that's very important because as women, especially Asian women, we don't get a lot of representation, and a lot of people think Asian women are just quiet and submissive, especially in the Western world. They have that thing called yellow fever. They just see us as someone who's exotic. So for me, I just wanted to create, number one, a support system, and number two, a stronger representation for Asian women.
All right. So so how long have you been doing podcasting?
So I started in September of 2015. I'm not sure where to look there. You guys.
That's fine. You can look into the camera.
Okay. So I started in 2015 of September, which was really scary for me because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue what a podcast was. And even 3 years ago, there wasn't that many Asian podcasters. So it's really great that I was able to stumble onto more Asian podcasters and groups like Podcast PH that helps me kind of bring that message out or show other Asians, that podcasting is a great tool to express yourself.
Who introduced you to podcasting?
It's really funny because for me, it was just actually a friend who told me that there's this guy who's who's really popular in the podcasting world. His name is John Lee Dumas.
Who is he?
We all know
Just
him.
kidding. We all know him.
For podcasters, we all know Johnny
Yeah.
Dumas.
Yeah,
But for
so-
everyone, can you give a brief introduction of who that guy is?
So he has a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. He's been doing it for quite some time. He interviews big-time entrepreneurs. And at that time, he had a course that I invested in because I said, if I'm going to learn it, I might as well learn it from someone who knows what he's doing. And even then, I still didn't know what I was doing. And it's really hard, especially, for a woman, especially Asian woman, to do something because we always want everything perfect to a T. You know, like especially being in Cebu, you know, going to school, you've been ingrained to be the perfect person, and it's not possible, right? It's very hard, and you know, sometimes being imperfect is actually what, you know, helps us relate to people, right? Like you guys said, you go through so many like mishaps. I've had my fair share too, and it took me a while for me to start my podcast because like I was afraid people might think I'm nuts. People might think my voice is annoying.
You
you
have a
know?
very nice voice.
Oh,
Like I was
salamat.
I was listening to your podcast. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
When I first started,
Good.
I did not like my voice. Even when edit ko, it's very like for me, it's like I sound funny, but like we all are our own worst critics, right? So,
Yeah.
Mona.
It's the same with me also. When I listen to my own voice, I feel like I'm like forcing things, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I should be more like Dave sometimes. You know, something like that.
Actually, I don't listen to all of our podcast show. I'm kidding. But we do have editors to do it for us. Yeah.
But I do listen to our podcast, and you know,
Yeah.
I was thinking like, oh, this area, yeah. But you're right. So you started this in September 2015, right?
Yes.
And by then why did you pick like, you know, why the title first of your podcast? What was
So okay, so funny story, huh? So like, I always wanted to do something to help women, especially with confidence and like empower them. And you know, at first I was just gonna do a blog, but like for me, a blog is not really. It doesn't make sense, especially if you're busy, right? If you're stuck in traffic, especially when you're in Cebu, the traffic is
yeah.
horrendous, right? It's crazy. You want to be able to listen to something while you're stuck in traffic, even if it's just from like Ayala to Grand Convention and it takes 45 minutes. Diba?
Exactly.
so, so you know, that's when I found out about podcasting because people can download it any leisure time, you know, when they're jogging, when they're stuck in traffic, or like if you're in the States or Canada, when you're in the subway, you know, you can listen to them. And you know, at that time, I was always trying to be clever so that people would, like, so I can get people to listen to me, right? So when I first started the podcast, I wanted to name it The Stripper because for me, it was like a tagline to strip all your limiting beliefs away. So, you know, nagpahimo ko like design, and it had like a stripper with a whip, and then thank God, like, I was in the group that I invested the course from John Lee Dumas because then I shared it, and they're like, you might bring out the wrong people. Oh, the message is all wrong. And at first, like, I was like, kanang kahila ko no sahay, because it's like, oh, I'm a failure. Like, I shared this, and then it's like they think it's stupid, so I must be stupid, right?
right, right.
So, and then you know, my friend helped me out. She's like a spiritual healer, and like she's very into spirituality, and she was telling me like, you know, your name needs something with the letter C, right? And so I'm like, okay, a C, right? And then, you know, they always say to check out other people's podcasts, see what their title is, right? So a lot of them was always like the art of, the art of, the art of.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, well, as an Asian person, I'll use the Tao.
Alright.
And then that's when like, I guess self-confidence came out, and that's where the letter C came out, right? Confidence, and it just went from there. And then I did the artwork and shared it again, and everyone loved it. So that's how I got my title.
Okay, so like, who were your like first? You know, who were the people that you were thinking? Oh, I'm. These are the people that would represent like what the podcast is all about. Like basically, you're like in the big picture workshop. We always talk about the first 10.
Yeah. And the blueprint. So basically,
Let's say
yeah.
like these are the people, the 10 guys that I think would, or women that would, in your case, women who would represent. Did you have that in mind when you started?
I don't know. I had a lot of women that I really wanted to ask. Like some I was able to get,
Yeah.
you know, like some like famous Filipina actresses like Cheska Kramer, which really like surprised me because I did not think she would say yes.
Yeah.
And like Miriam Kiambao,
Nice.
Karen Sita,
Yeah.
and some other women. I forget their names, but I mean, like I just never thought that they would actually come on the podcast and share their story. And then, you know, they were able to refer me to other women who to interview as well.
Nice.
And even like, I guess sometimes like in the like in the States and stuff too, right? Because Asian representation there is also very limited, right? It's still underrepresented. So, there was a lot of women there that I was able to interview that I never thought I'd interview either, like, some actresses and seven-figure earners, like all these big names, right? And like, here's me. I don't really have anything special to do other than, I asked them a couple questions, So it's not.
And then they get to appear in the show with you.
Yeah, I mean, they share their stories, they share their tips.
Does it like boost your confidence also? Like
At first, no. To be honest, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't. Because, when you interview these women who have like big jobs, big names, some of them have like 2 million followers on Instagram. And I'm like, why did they even say yes to me? Like, I don't even understand, right? Like, I don't get why they would want to talk to me. So
you have 800,000 downloads.
I
That's
know.
all.
and then like, I felt really small because it's like, here's me, and then here's all these women. So it took me a while to realize, like, instead of me being like jealous or comparing myself, I should be happy that there are women out there who are doing these, because without them, then we can't see what else is possible, especially for Asian women. So at first, yeah, it was really like I had very low self-esteem or self-confidence, because I just felt like I wasn't good enough, like comparing myself to them. And, as I listened to their stories and what they've gone through, as women, we always feel like we're the only ones going through something, right? Whether it's, we think we're fat, our clothes don't look good on us, or we're suffering from mental health, problems. We feel like we're the only ones. But when women share their story, we can relate to them and say, okay, I'm not the only one, and I can get out of it if she can get out of it. So.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add on her point that as a podcaster, it's like having a free ticket. You can like go to someone, hey, we want to interview you, and that's what we're actually been doing, right? I mean, that in the U.S., it's actually like that. Podcasters are able to get as many people as they like because of being a podcaster, and I think it's in a way we're helping other people who listen. So because each of us has our own story, has our own market, and if someone taps into this group, he can access that, or he or she can access that, and unknowingly get referrals, get businesses out of it. And I think that's a win-win for anyone who gets interviewed, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
people could tap into, especially with the millennial crowd now, or
Yeah.
or with the new gen, the internet crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have similar experience with you also. Like, I send this email, right? I mean, I get a hold of someone's email that I really like to be in the podcast. Send them an email or a message over Facebook Messenger, and I understand, Dave, that we're actually giving them value also, because we're actually sharing our audience to them. So it's like they're giving us value, right? And we're also giving them value. But at the back of my mind, there's also this like nagging voice that says like, do you even have enough to give to that person? This kind of feeling sometimes. And I think it's a good thing in a way that when they say yes, you kind of get surprised, and like a jolt of energy would just rush into you. And like it happens many times with Dave and I would send Dave like a screenshot of our conversation. I'm like, Dave, check this out. And Dave would like, oh, wow. So that's kind of an amazing thing. And I mean, do you have similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, when Cheska Kramer said yes, I was like, oh.
You were dancing?
I was like, oh my God. Actually, I didn't believe she would say yes. Like, they're the most followed family in the Philippines, you know?
It's true.
And then I told my sister, because she's, she loves, like, Filipino entertainment. And she's like, shut up. No, I'm like, seriously, I am. Like, she even had to wake me up because I was in Toronto at the time. And I had to interview at, like, 1 in the morning because I'm, like, 12 hours behind. And, like, if she didn't wake me up, I'd totally miss that interview. So, I really have to thank her for doing that. But yeah, like, and when I share the women that I interview, some of the people are like, how do you know her? I'm like, I don't know. I just sent her a message, like I send the same message to every woman. I lead with the podcast. I lead with the purpose of it. Yeah, I just lead with the purpose. It's
Yeah.
very simple, and most people will get it, right?
Yeah.
And not everyone says yes. I get rejected too. It's part of life, right?
Yeah.
And I had to realize like it's okay to get rejected. Sometimes it may be no now, but it may not be no like 2 months from now, 2 years from
Exactly.
now. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also to add, podcasting is. I think they see like what the purpose of the show is, and some people actually notice that. Like, for us, they always ask, "What's a podcast all about?" And we tell up front that it's all about, helping people to see, think, act big, and for Filipinos to take the next step. So basically, they are drawn by that concept of that, what do you call it? That purpose of our goal of really helping Filipinos, and that way for you, it's very specific. Women
Yeah.
helping women,
Asian women.
reach confidence, right? Asian women.
Yes.
but the whole, yeah. So if they hear that, it's more than just a podcast. It's more of like a cause, and people love doing that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like for the big picture also, like we all Dave and I already have like before when someone would ask us in the very beginning, I think Dave and I would probably have like a somewhat different answer, right? But now we said like, oh wait, this is what we realize, this is what we're actually doing, and
clarity
and
is
it's
really
very
powerful.
clear and it's easier to convey to people. In the Tao of Self-Confidence, you've interviewed over 500 Asian women, right?
Oh,
Maybe.
over 500
500
women.
women in
Probably
general.
almost 500 Asian women.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when I started, I did do a lot of like mix, and
Okay.
then kind of just decided to interview Asian women.
Okay, one question would be like if like I think I've listened to maybe 5-6 episodes from your podcast. Very interesting. I mean, if like when the last one I listened to was like a lady who used LSD or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But then you have this big disclaimer. I was
Oh,
wondering,
yeah.
like, how do you actually do this?
Oh, like the disclaimer or
Yeah, you did that. No, I mean,
mean-
like, I was thinking when I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, like, what I wonder what the copy would look like so that it would not sound like you're supporting the use of LSD. And you did have that.
Yeah, I
You were
had to
thinking ahead.
because there's I mean I never know who's listening out
Yeah,
there.
sure,
So I mean, yes, it may work for one person, and I would never turn down a person's way of fixing herself,
Yeah.
right? If it helped her, it's great. But I also like to say, like, just because it works for her,
It doesn't have to.
it doesn't necessarily work
necessarily-
for everyone. And with confidence, there's never one way to build it.
Sure.
There's many ways, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I had to put a disclaimer. Like, I just felt better, and I even told the guest, and she felt good too. She's like, "Yeah, actually, I appreciate that." So you do
That
you do
was
these
good.
little
I
things.
I was looking at the title. I got baited. I guess. Like, I clicked right away and I like downloaded the episode. And I was wondering like, wow, she actually used this word in the title,
Yeah.
and so I have to go through the
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for people who didn't know, if you're building a brand online, you have to take care of it. And at the same time, there's like there are too many people that's involved basically in a podcast. There's you, there's the people that you interview, and there's the people who are actually listening, consuming the content, and you have to think through like what goes on through their mind
Well,
when
Yeah.
you listen to it.
Yeah, you also have a responsibility,
Yes.
Diba? So it's like, you can't just put stuff out there and, people are going to take it the wrong way sometimes. So you have to have some type of disclaimer, especially like in special cases like that. And you go with your gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
You just, if it feels right, then you just do it. And, everything else will be okay.
Yeah, and now we get into this topic of confidence. You mentioned it's like passing. So confidence. You've interviewed people 500 over 500 now 600 I bet because you've
Yeah.
already recorded about 600 episodes.
Yeah.
So have you seen a pattern of how confidence works? So like,
I mean, like I mentioned, everyone has their own way of doing it. But one thing, there are similarities. Some of the women, they really work on themselves, like self-love and learning to fully love themselves, including their mistakes, their flaws. And that's really hard to do, right? Because, especially living in the Philippines, we've been taught to like, always be the best, always be perfect, always be, that good daughter, that good wife or sister or whatever. And we feel like if we don't do that, we're a failure. So, you know, one of the things I learned is really like loving yourself, because especially like, you know, there's women out there who want to find their like soulmate or, you know, significant other. It really has to start with you, because, you know, how you love yourself, you're going to attract the same person, right? So if you you know, treat yourself like crap, you're going to attract someone who's going to treat yourself like crap. And, you know, I know because I've experienced it, right? Like I would think back, I'm like, oh my God, it totally makes sense. So you really have to start with yourself, right? And, you know, we're always going to go through some bad apples, maybe more than a few, but, you know, it's part of life, right? And, you know, confidence is also just like seeing what works for you, right? Like testing, right? Maybe this way won't work, but that way will work. So one of the things is learning to love themselves, like fully love yourself. Like, you know, especially nowadays in the Philippines, what's great thing about the Philippines is there's a lot of women out there who are promoting like body positivity, and which is great, right? Because not everyone in the Philippines is a size 0, right?
Right.
You know, you see like
Only Dave and I. Just kidding. Go ahead.
you know, you see billboards of like women who are like, you know, altered to a T to make them look perfect, and it's
Photoshop.
yeah, and you know, it's not easy to see that when you're like along EDSA or SRP and you see this big billboard of like this really pretty Filipina who is like altered, right? And you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but I just wish they would show more authenticity, right? So I'm really glad that there's a lot of body positivity like campaigns and women out there who are promoting it. Like I just recently interviewed a woman from here who was in like that show where you travel and race, Amazing Race. Yeah, so and like she's also into the body positivity, so it's great to see that. And some other things that I've noticed is that a lot of women have a big purpose. And when I mean like something that's bigger than them, right? It could be being a better mother, or you know, like creating a podcast to help Asian women. That purpose has really helped them kind of like catapult their confidence, because it's something that's bigger than them, and they're willing to do it because they're not just doing it for themselves, they're doing it for other people to shine through. And you know, that's really big, because there's going to be days where you just, yeah, there's days where I want to throw my computer, you know, like as a podcaster, like,
Yeah.
you know, you go through all these like frustrations, and you just like, there's days where I want to quit, because sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing this for, right? Yeah. But then I get messages from women who tell me like, oh, you know, the show really helped me. I did my first like Toastmaster speech, and I'm really glad that, you know, the show is around. So, you know, like those simple things really like say, okay, now I know why. So yeah, having a big purpose is huge. Being grateful, you know. I know sometimes we take things for granted, especially, you know, when you come to a country like the Philippines and you see so much poverty, like you really see how lucky you are, right? You know, instead of you complaining about your job, be blessed that you have a job, right? You're not on the streets begging for money, right? So really, like having that gratitude is really big, and you know, just taking action. You know, like I know as women we're very analytical, and we think like overthink everything, like overthink every single
We
item.
don't know anyone who's like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Everyone we know, every woman
even
we
the
know
restaurants.
probably.
You know, everyone.
Everyone
Where
know.
to go?
It's always like ready, aim, fire, right?
Right.
But you know, we keep on aiming that we forget to fire. So I like this saying, it's ready, fire, aim. You just do it and just kind of course correct along the way.
I
And
like that. I like that.
yeah, and that's what I've noticed a lot of women when they first started their businesses, they had no clue what they were doing, like nothing. Like they didn't know. They just had this idea, right? And like they would just figure it out along the way. Like I remember interviewing this one woman who decided to do like a marketing event, right? So she sent an email and got like $20,000 of people coming to this event. They're like, I guess we should find a place now and figure out what we're going to talk about.
Wow.
You know? And when I hear stories like that, I'm like, oh, okay, thank God I'm not the only one who feels like we don't know what we're doing. Yeah. And, you know, it was successful, and they've been doing, like, these events, more and more of these events. But when they first started, it was just like, okay, let's send this email. Let's see how many people will show up. And it's like, oh, so I guess we should find a place. We should get some vendors. We should have an outline. But
Yeah,
like
I mean that's a very interesting thing because like sometimes we overthink, right? Like creating
Yeah.
events or like like launching, for example, like launching anything like a podcast, for
Oh
example.
yeah.
We're thinking like maybe people will ask more details, but the reality is they're just gonna accept it as it is, and
Yeah.
then once uh, you get some traction, then that's when that thing gets
You
gets
build a
real.
parachute when
When
on
you're
your way
about- when you're
down.
way down.
Yeah, and
So basically,
and especially when you have a loyal audience, like people love seeing your journey from like when you first started to like now, right? Like when we first start, we're a hot mess. We don't know what we're doing. There's like so many things like in the background, like especially with my podcast, like it's not always like quiet. I've had women who are, playing with monkeys in the like
Oh,
there's
yeah.
monkeys like chirping in Bali, or like they're stuck in a subway in San Francisco, or even like a busy restaurant in Cebu. But I just keep it there because it's not always perfect, and sometimes that imperfection really helps people like realize like it doesn't have to be perfect. Like just put it out there and see what happens. But before that, I would always think like, oh my God, it's not perfect. I can't put that out. Oh my God, I said this word and it sounds really stupid. And then especially like I would compare myself to like John Lee Dumas. I'm like, oh my God, I can't be like him. And I never want to, because he's totally different. His journey is different, and I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to be myself, and share my message, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Based on this, like, I'm really curious. I think we haven't asked her why you started the podcast in itself, and like after 500 episode, what happened? Like, are there any transformation, or is there any transformation with you, with your audience, and also from that
But for
zero
I would
to
say
500?
to use Jen Lee's and your podcast, you always say this. What are the aha moments?
Yeah.
I would say.
So, well, one of the main reasons why I started it was because, I
For
was.
you, basically?
Yeah,
or-
I wasn't confident. I was totally not confident. I just never thought I was good enough. I settled a lot, whether it was through work or relationships. And I just said, why isn't there anything for like Asian women? There's for white women, black women. Like, I'm not trying to be like, picking races, but it's like, why isn't there one for Asian women? Like, there's so many Asian women out there who are suffering. I'm sure like, there has to be something, right? And it was hard. Like, I couldn't find anything. Like, growing up in Canada too, like it's hard because like when you watch TV, all you see is like mga puti people, right? And it's like you wanna aspire to be them, right? It's like, well, I don't have blonde hair, I don't have blue eyes, like I have inchick eyes, I have black hair, and it was funny because the first show I saw there was called All American Girl by Margaret Cho. She's a, I think, Korean comedian, and that was the first time I realized, oh, there's someone there who looks like me, there finally someone that looks like me. And it's just from there, like I realized, well, if there's nothing out there, then I'll create it, right? I'll do it. And that's why, like, sometimes if you can't find the thing that you're looking for, maybe you should be the one creating it, right?
That's very powerful.
Yeah. And then, yeah, from there, like, I've learned to really accept I really accept myself for who I am. Like, it was really hard to accept the bad side of me, like my flaws and like the mistakes I make. And some people don't realize like those things are actually could be your greatest strengths. Like, your biggest mistakes could also lead you to your greatest opportunities. And I think some people forget that, right? I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but it's also led me to a lot of good places, right? And just being able to see things differently, right? Seeing what's out there, seeing what's possible. I mean, I've interviewed women who skateboard with no legs, who can fly a plane with their legs because they were born with no arms. And it's just like seeing that is like, if they can do it, like, what's our excuse?
Amazing.
Yeah.
What surprised you? Like, what's the like? Yeah. What are the things that surprised? Like, what are the stories or
The
things
story.
that- yeah.
Well, yeah. So I interviewed a woman who was the first armless pilot. She was born with no arms.
She flies commercial plane.
I have no idea. Oh no, I don't think so. Not that I know of.
I'm just maybe not.
I'm not sure. I've never seen her on a PAL airplane.
But anyway, she flies.
But
plane.
she can fly a plane with
Yeah,
her legs.
nice.
She like drives her car. She does everything with her legs. And she always thought that, she was defined by her limitations, having no arms, but actually it's because of the situation she's in, she could go out there and inspire others, to do and be more and not be limited to your like disabilities, right? And same goes for, I interviewed a woman who was born with no legs. She was like actually found on the streets of Thailand, and someone like found her and she got adopted by an American family. But you know, I remember she said that she wanted to skateboard, and like, having no legs never stopped her from doing it. She just said that, I skateboard because I want to skateboard. And it can be that simple, right? I mean, I'm not saying it was a simple journey for her, but because it was just the simplicity of wanting to skateboard, she did it.
Yeah.
So, and even there was another lady who, all her life she wanted to be a Christmas song artist since she was 7.
Okay.
Okay, and that's all she wanted to do was write and sing Christmas songs. And it's like, how many people are gonna sign up a recording artist who just sings and write Christmas songs, right? So she had to like open her own recording company to sign herself and put herself out there. And like her Christmas songs were, in the top of the charts on some billboards. And she got signed here in the Philippines because Christmas is like 6 months out of the year here.
That's true.
But it just goes to show, like, if you really believe in what you're doing, or if you're really passionate about it, you're gonna do whatever it takes to do it. And it's not like it's always a walk in the park. It's gonna be hard. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days where you're gonna cry or quit or feel like, what am I doing? But it's all worth it. I've read so many stories of successful people who've gone through their fair share of battles, who've waited like 5-10 years to even become successful. And not most people are willing to do that, right? Most people will be like, it's not working.
Sure.
It's either it doesn't work or you just make it work regardless what happens. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I would like to comment on that because me personally, like, I'm addicted to stories, right? We always love to hear the stories of our guests and also stories of successful people and some people, the trailblazers, basically. So there's one podcast called The Story, and it's really amazing how they tell the story of someone in a different angle that you never thought, hey, that was that person. You can only guess it like after. Yeah, so it's interesting. Even Cory Aquino was there. It's like they tell the story of Cory in such a way that was like amazing. So anyway, I'm not being political or anything, but yeah. So stories are very powerful, and each of us has their own story. I believe that, and podcasting is in a way just to unravel that person or unravel that the stories behind the real stories behind it, and yeah, and sometimes you can't just read that from a book. So yeah, you have to like see that person and get the clues from the reaction, the vocal variety and all, and I think that's very powerful.
Okay, so I guess my question is,
Yeah.
like if you can go through like your mails, like your email about the podcast, like what were the most memorable email that you received about the Tao
Yeah,
of
doing the
Self-Confidence?
show basically.
Just I remember there's this one girl who was a model, and she never thought she was pretty, but it's like when I saw her picture, like she's gorgeous, right? And you just never know how many people feel so small, even though they're pretty, and just she's saying how it really helped her because she was bullied, she had acne problems, and just knowing that there's people out there who went through the same battles as she went through makes it a lot better. And I think that's what's missing, right? We always see everyone's glory. We never hear anyone's real story. We never hear, how much, they've gone through bankruptcy but was still willing to come back up, that they were raped or, abused domestically, or they've been through cancer, or have no legs or have no arms. Like nobody talks about that stuff. And I wish they did, because then we can realize, like, we're just human. We're not like Superman. And even Superman has his bad days. Even Adarna has her bad days. And yeah, like just seeing women telling me like it's really helped them just, makes me feel like it just helps me realize like there is like people out there are listening to it, and it's funny, like people tell me they've been listening to it for a year, and I'm just like,
Wow.
really?
Yeah, maybe they just subscribe and they listen to
Yeah.
and you're in the 535 episodes right
Maybe
now.
more
I
now.
checked
I think a little
Last
more
time.
now.
So, are you gonna do this until what? 1,000,000 or 1,000? So
I don't know.
What's in the
For me, I was just gonna do it until I don't have the capacity to do it. So
is that something that like? I mean, right? I'll have to put it out there that Sheena is not. Are you earning from your podcast right now or not yet?
It's like up and down currently. Like I haven't really focused on that part, and I have things there that if people want to learn podcasting or self-confidence, I have tools and resources out there. But I've really just been focusing on the show.
So yeah, it's basically it's a vacation, and you're doing it out of passion. That's what you've mentioned earlier before
Yeah.
the show. So I mean, that's very powerful, right? If you want to do I've learned this that passion is something that you do even if everyone's dead already, or like it's something that you love to do despite the odds. So and despite doing it for the rest of your life. So I think this is a really good point to insert there. Passion is, even if she doesn't really know where it's setting, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of like the future, like are there women in particular that you're still eyeing to like invite in the show?
Oh, there's tons. I have
Like any few, yeah.
I have a long list. Like the whole cast of Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, some famous. I mean, some more like women out here who've done like great things. I don't know if I name them, we might be here all day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think the cast for Crazy Rich Asians are very interesting for your
Yeah,
show.
I
also.
mean, first like Asian
they've done
movie
something, yeah.
in like 25 years since like the Joy Luck Club. So, that's very powerful in its own.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So like other than the podcast, like you're offering like how to build a podcast, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people.
Do you have like online courses?
Yeah, so I do have an online course on how
Yeah.
to set it up because like so many people kept asking me. I was like, well, I have a course. It's small for a small fee. You can invest in it. I have written some books like how to make money with podcasting.
Sure.
How to boost your confidence. Just tools and resources I've used like mics because a lot of people ask me, oh, what kind of mic do you use? Oh, what kind of this do you use? And things like that. So.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot like some are free, some are paid. I've started giving away one thing called a self-talk tape, and I read that in a book. It's a tape or like an audio that
Audiobook, right?
well, just a little audio that you say like affirmations to yourself.
cool.
You say it. You just
So
listen.
you just
to
listen
it.
to it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's very powerful.
It's free.
Yes, there's one that's free.
There's one that's free. Okay. No, but like I think Dave, we talk about like in the early stage. I think a few episodes when we started, we talk about affirmation, right? Like how powerful it was.
exactly.
You remember that?
Should connect that
So
episode.
yeah, we should connect that episode because like in the Philippines, it's not very frequent. People didn't realize. I think people are unconsciously using affirmation.
Yeah.
But there's like a more like if you're consciously using that, it would totally make it a lot of difference. And then like listening to an audio that sometimes you don't know what to say. Like a lot of people would ask me about affirmation. I would say like, what exactly would I say? What exactly would I affirm?
Yeah.
And if you have that resource, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just simple things that you might or might not say to yourself,
Yeah.
but it's there, right, for anyone who wants to use it because, like I mentioned, not everyone likes to hear their own voice. They'd rather hear a voice that they can feel comfortable with. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're comfortable with mine.
So out of the 500 episodes, by the way, have you like missed a day of not releasing?
No, I mean I take breaks in between, so
Oh, okay. You have like a season.
I have season breaks.
Oh, I see.
So that's why I don't really miss everything. I kind of pre-plan stuff.
All right. So
Yeah.
is that the secret? Pre-planning is the secret to consistency, or do you have any other
Pre-planning,
secret?
Google Calendar is my best friend.
Podcasting is not easy. I would have to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has to.
It's fun, but
It's fun, yeah, but you have
Yes.
to. There's always.
it's fun and it's free for the people who consume it. But
Yeah.
it's
there's a lot of work
There's
behind
price
this.
and work.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
anything worth doing, there's always
Exactly.
work put into it, right? You
Exactly,
start a
yeah.
restaurant, you put work into it. You start a brick and mortar business,
Yeah.
you have to put your work in it. But I don't think it's called work if you like what you do.
Exactly.
I mean, I never consider it as work. Maybe once in a while, but not most of the time. Like people are like, "Don't you get sick of it?" I'm like, "No, not really." Like I really love connecting with the women I've interviewed. Like I never in a million years would think I can connect with like women of like big influence and like who've won awards like Forbes is 30 under 30 things like that. And it's all because of a podcast, all because I decided to create something that can be useful for other women out there and maybe even some of the men, because I have a lot of men asking me confidence questions too. So.
Maybe that was me.
Maybe you can ask us.
Oh yeah.
It must be sending you messages. All right, also. All right, so okay, what do you think is next for the Tao of Self-Confidence?
Oh my God.
Next level.
I haven't even thought that far ahead. I don't know. I've learned to just stop thinking of the next step and kind of like go with the flow. Because I've learned that when I try to force things, it really just like
Yeah.
yeah. And then like when I just kind of like go with the flow and just do things naturally, like so many good things happen, right? And that was a hard lesson to learn because we always want to control everything.
Yeah.
And you can't,
True.
right? You can't. Like, there's just things it's just out of your control, and you just have to learn to live with it and be okay with it, and kind of just pick yourself back up, especially when there's days where you don't feel like picking yourself back up.
I don't know if you've read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh yeah, I did.
I've read it, but it has basically the same philosophy there. And I'm actually listening to it now with an Audible, so it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like
I listened to the few chapters.
few chapters
I
that
think
you
I-
stopped.
No, I didn't really I guess like I was kind of distracted with another.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the audiobooks that I have, like I usually jump.
But yeah, so
Let me go
basically,
back there.
it's more of like there's so many things going on in life. I mean, we just have to admit that it's so live with it and choose the battles that you want to. Choose the things that you want to give up.
Normally we end this portion of the show, Sheena, with our learnings, from Dave and I, and as usual, Dave will start.
I'll start. Yeah. So I think. I mean, I believe that everyone has a story, and I think that that's very powerful because stories are what makes the world go round. That's what I believe in. And I think Sheena is addicted to these stories as well as I do. So, understanding those people, it's like a person is more than a book, but it's more like a book in a way that you open them and you get to understand them. And like what she's doing now, I'm never gonna get tired of doing that. And I suggest that to everyone who wants to hear a lot more stories or live a lot more lives by living or hearing stories of other people. And I think that's very powerful as a human being.
Couple of things from me. One thing that really stood out was when you said something about like just starting it, just doing it. Like we talk a little bit about building your parachute on your way down.
Yeah.
And that's
Progress,
very,
not perfection, is always our theme, right?
progress over perfection. And the reason why I when I listen to that, I always want to, like, I think that kind of message there has to be more people that needs to be talking about that, because a lot of people are holding themselves back, and the reason probably is like just calendar it, just do it, just schedule it, just set the appointment, just set up your camera right, just buy that microphone or whatever, and a lot of people are stopped, and including myself. Like, and when I look back, a lot of the things that stops me from doing something, including like building this podcast, was really just putting my, I don't have a heels, but if you have heels in the ground, just putting your heels on the ground and just say like let's just get moving. And like when Dave and I, for example, would plan, we just say like just set it in the calendar and it's gonna happen, right? So
Just show up.
Just show up, right? And the second thing, like one of the things that I would say that I like to invite people like basing on your story, like invite people to, like, if you want to build a podcast, just build a podcast. And the reason I do that because when I look at your work, I would say like, wow, that's something. There's a lot of investment that time and passion into it. You don't reach 500 episodes. I mean, just because you want to try things out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, definitely there's that feeling that like I want to do something. I have a message, and and I think because you have a goal that's higher than yourself, that you have something that's higher than yourself. That's where your confidence is coming from. I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so if because sometimes we said like people would say I don't have enough confidence, so it's just more of like just do it or have a goal that's higher than yourself. So I really like that part of our discussion. All right, so now let's move on to our lightning round. Okay. All right, so you're familiar with this, I guess.
Yeah, she has segments.
A little bit. Okay, so do you have a morning routine, and what is it that you can share to our guests?
Well, my morning routine, I wake up. I'm a early person. I don't really like sleeping in. So I will wake up sometimes 5 or 6 in the morning. I'll work out if I have the strength to go and get up and work out. Other than that, I talk to my friends in the in Canada, because like the time difference is okay there. Other than that, I check out, if I have interviews to do or whatever work I want to work on or something that I want to learn on, then I do that. Other than that, I'll spend time with my Lola here in the mornings. So yeah.
Nice. So, do you like who or what inspires you?
Just I guess women, just like people's stories that they don't even have to be the greatest stories. It's just a story that's like simple and like something you can relate to and be like, wow, like that's amazing. Like I'm glad they're able to do that. I mean, I've interviewed like little girls who are like 7 or 8 and they've started their own careers and own companies and like
7 or 8.
8 or 9.
But nevertheless, they're still like
They're still they're still very young. Like there's this one girl who created a coding game to help kids learn how to
We
code.
should interview him.
And she's only like now she's probably like 9 or 10. But I think when I interviewed her, she was like 8 or 9. And even when I interviewed her, I was like, you don't even sound like you're 8 or 9. Like she sounded like a professional like businesswoman, but she's a child, and just hearing that even like inspires me. It's like, wow, here's a kid who instead is playing with Barbies is creating a video game. She was able to like ring the bell in the NASDAQ.
They're publicly listed.
I don't know. She just went to ring the bell.
Okay, I thought.
I think
It's just like a guest
It's
to
a
ring
public
the
figure,
bell.
I guess.
Yeah, and just seeing that, like it's great, and just hearing their stories. Like you're never too old or too young to learn from anyone. And I also like to have like I guess a wide age range to show like there's kids out there who are doing stuff. There's millennials. There's 30, 40 something. And then there's, a little bit older who are, doing things, right? You're never too young. You're never too old to start something. Even though you may feel like you're, too old, you're not. Like, so many people out there started their businesses in their 50s and 60s. So, I mean, like, yeah.
Okay, so next question would be: are there any books, shows, podcasts, other resources that you can recommend to to our audience?
I mean, I like joining a lot of women's groups just so that I can relate. And
that's Facebook groups, right?
yeah, Facebook groups, a lot of podcasting groups, because I understand what most podcasters are going through, and just the connections. I love the podcasting community because it's very, very real. You get what you see, and I love that. And people there are actually genuine people who are out there to help you. Like I went to a podcasting event in Chicago a couple of years back. And, it was just like, I felt like I was just at home. Like, I've never met these people in my life ever. And, just seeing them for the first time, it was just like, wow, like, this is a great community. I finally feel like I can be myself and people are okay with that, right? There's no like drama, everything's straightforward. and everyone has fun like doing it, right? Like they really look out for other people. So I mean, who you surround yourself with is huge. I read a lot of self-help books. I know some people might think it's corny, but it really
Not with our audience. Our
that's
audience
good.
are pretty much like loving every
If you
single
can mention a few
recommendation,
or one. That
I
you
mean, I
really like.
started as simple as The Secret.
Yeah.
All right.
How to win friends and influence others. The subtle of not giving a fuck. There were some other ones that I read. The 5 Languages of Love. Um, something with I don't know. I've read so many books. The Science of Getting Rich.
Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, something with what people do before 8 a.m. It's like
Miracle Morning. Is that?
no. I've read that, but there's another book, and
From a
it's-
lady, right?
I think so, but it's like what
What successful people do before
8 a.m. or something like that.
6 or something.
Yeah,
But
something
anyway.
like that.
We will point all those.
I've read that book.
resources.
But
Yeah. So yeah.
So the next question is: do you consider yourself successful?
For me, in some areas, yes. I mean, in a generally yes, but we live in a world where we feel like we need to have a title or a status or have a certain amount of money in the bank, and that I'm definitely not successful in. But living my life and doing what I love, that's what I find successful. And I think sometimes we have to redefine what success is, right? I mean, there's people out there who will probably disagree with some of the things I say, but that's fine because we're not here to please everyone. You have to do things that's right for you, right? Some people don't believe that passion will make you happy or passion will make money. But that's fine, right? But there's some people who will believe that, and it all depends on how you see it and what your gut feeling is telling you. So, yeah.
That was actually a trick question because we all define success in a different way. So yeah.
Right. So next question would be, there are people who like they're working in another country and they want to come back, but they don't know. Like basically, what they're doing something that they don't love. Whether they're working in another country or they're working in a job at a 9 to 5 that they don't really like. What advice can you give them?
I say start small. Like, if there's something that you really love to do, you start small. Confidence isn't always like taking a big leap, right? It can be something as, having a side business or side passion that can turn into a full-time career. A lot of people do that. A lot of the women I've interviewed really started their careers out of fun, whether it was a makeup YouTube channel, or acting or singing. It was all like done on the side until it replenished their full-time income to do it. And yeah, it's going to take work like anything else. I think people have to realize you're going to have to put in the work, but if you love what you're doing, you won't call it work. But start small, right? Take those small steps. That's what builds confidence when you can say like for example, maybe you want to start jogging. You want to start with 1 kilometer, right?
Yeah.
You did it, right?
Yeah.
You celebrate it. Then tomorrow you're going to add maybe a 0.1 kilometer and you finish it. Then you pat on the back and you slowly do that until you reach a full marathon, right? But most people start with that first step or that first kilometer and you just slowly build it up. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Most of these overnight success, people have been building it for years and years and years. Just they don't talk about it, right? And, I think we have to realize, like, I'm not saying that it won't happen, but most of them, it's like they've been working in the background for so long. It just seems like an overnight success, but they've been at this for a long time.
So I'm gonna ask the last question.
Okay.
All right. So the last question is, where do people find you? Like how to connect? We all
Oh.
know Tao of Self-Confidence. Maybe you can.
I mean, if they look up my name, Sheena Yap Chan, I'm like the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet, so it's not really hard to find. But yeah, they can find the Tao of Self-Confidence on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Android, all the podcast directories. You can check out my website, the Tao of Self-Confidence, social media. So yeah, I'm not hard to find.
All right. So all the resources, the books that we've mentioned, where you can find Sheena, you can find all of those on our show notes page when the show goes live, or on iTunes or on our WordPress site. So that's thebigpicture.ph/episode 42. So that was a fun interview.
Yeah, thank you, Sheena, for for being here and coming in the show and we really appreciate that you coming, taking the time to be here with us.
No, I mean, I'm honored to be here today. So thanks. Salamat.
All right.
All right.
So,
Yeah. So, Dave, any announcement?
oh yeah, basically, I don't know. Thank you so much for viewing, for watching us on a Wednesday. So we're thinking of figuring out like a way to
The
make
best
this,
day
best day
in
for
the
us.
week.
So we're trying to experiment a lot. Although we're trying to also become as consistent as Sheena here. But yeah, so we're figuring it out. Maybe we're going to be a weekly show soon. So give us your comments, suggestions, guys. Let us know like the best time for you to watch live or to have what day you want to have for the shows to be released. And do check out our Facebook page. So The Big Picture, facebook.com/The Big Picture, the community, and subscribe to us. We're on Spotify. So guys, if you have Spotify, if you listen to music on your way to wherever,
Don't listen to music.
don't listen to music. I mean, I listen to music for the
Just
first 5
kidding.
minutes, and listen to the podcast because you learn a lot and meet people like Sheena here, and of course, be inspired of podcasting is really good, and we're gonna plan
We love
to
it.
have a lot of influential people and also very interesting people for you in our next shows. So subscribe, guys.
Well, so this has been really fun for me, Dave, Sheena.
Yes, and
And
thank
so-
you, Mezzanine,
and
for allowing
And
us
we are
to use
here.
this room.
Yes, we are here as usual in Mezzanine Cafe. If you want to watch us next week live, you can be part of our audience and you can ask questions. Though we haven't tried, we did try that, but if you're here, let us know. And then with that, thank you so much for watching, staying tuned. This is still up in the Big Picture, facebook.com/The Big Picture. And with that, this has been Joe
This is Dave, and
and
this is
Sheena saying goodbye.
Bye.